Hi, I'm Liz Sneddon. Let's have a look at adding and subtracting fractions. So when we're talking about fractions, we've got the numerator, which is the number on the top of the fraction, and then the denominator, which is the number on the bottom. And the line between them is a division line, or divided by. So there's two types of calculations we need to deal with. We need to deal with whether the fractions have got the same denominator or a different denominator. So let's start with looking at fractions with the same denominator. So if I take this example here, so 2 quarters plus 1 quarter. So you can see I've got both the numerical version and a visual picture of it. So if I've got 2/4 plus 1/4 and I add those together, then what's happening is I take my 2/4, I add the 1/4, and that gives me a total of 3/4. So that would be my answer. So when the denominator is the same, you can see there in those equations, in all three fractions, the 2 quarters, the 1 quarter, the 3 quarters, they've all got the same denominator. So the bottom number hasn't changed. And then the numbers on the top, the 2 and the 1, we've added those together to get the 3. So let's try another example. I have 2/3, take away 1/3. So when I'm subtracting now, so both of the fractions are in thirds, and I am going to take my 2 minus the 1, and that is going to leave me with 1/3. So again, the denominators, the number on the bottom has stayed the same, and it's only the number on the top, the numerator, that we've subtracted. So that leaves us to this process, if you like. So fractions with the same denominator, we add or subtract the numerator, we leave the denominator alone, and if we need to simplify it, we can do that. So what if we've got fractions with different denominators? So here's an example. I've got a half, plus I want to add a quarter to that. So they've got different denominators. Divided by 2, divided by 4, different denominators. So the first thing we need to do is make them into the same denominator. So I'm going to take the first fraction, and I can nicely change that into quarters. So what I've done then, you can see in the picture, I now have 4 quarters, and 2 of them are still coloured blue. Okay, so a half, it's the same area, I'm just dividing it into 4, and so there is 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So dealing with equivalent fractions. So now that they've got the same denominator, we can use the rule that we used previously. We can take each of those numbers and combine them together. So 2 quarters plus 1 quarter is going to give us 3 quarters. So the denominator stays the same, and add the numerator. Let's try a last example here. So if I've got 3 quarters and I want to subtract 2/5. So you'll notice I've drawn them slightly differently now. I've got one going bars horizontally and one bars vertically. And there's a reason for that. So the first thing we need to do is identify the denominators are both different. The first one's got a denominator of 4. The second fraction has got a denominator of 5. So we need to find equivalent fractions. And so what we can do is we can take those denominators, and I'm going to split that first one, change it into a denominator of 20. So let's show what I did. So I've got 4 rows across, and what I've done now is I've added the 5 bars going down. So I'm using some information from the second fraction. And I'm going to do exactly the same with the second fraction. I've got 5 bars going down. I'm going to add 4 bars going across. And then I've got the equivalent fraction. So I've made the denominators into the same. And now we've got the same denominator, we can subtract the numerator. So that's when I can say, right, 15 minus 8 is going to leave me with 7 out of 20, which is the new numerator. So that leads to this process. Change both the fractions into equivalent fractions, and often that involves finding things like the lowest common multiple of numbers. We want to add or subtract the numerator, leave the denominators alone and simplify the answer. So we can also do this on our calculator. So let's just have a look for a moment on how we can do this using either of these two calculators. So I'm going to start with the scientific calculator here, the one in the middle, and I've got a fraction button here, and so I can press that fraction button on my screen and I can see that it comes up there. So if I had, for example, 1, and now so what I've done now is I can use these little buttons here to go left, right, up and down. So if I go down, that takes me down to the bottom, so I can say a half. Now I need to move out to the side because I don't want to stay on the bottom anymore. So I'm going to use the button here, and that's moved it to the side. So I'm going to say a half minus, and then I'm going to do a quarter, 1/4, and press equals, and that gives me the answer there showing is 1/4. So if I wanted to do more difficult fractions, so I might have, for example, 11/20, and I want to say that plus 8/5 equals, and what it's done now is it's giving me the answer as what we call a improper fraction. So you can see the number on the top is bigger than the number on the bottom, so the numerator is bigger than the denominator. If I don't like it in that form, then up here there's a button here, S to D, but above that button in the yellow, if you can see that yellow there, it's the same color as the shift button, and that's intentional. So I'm going to press my shift button, and I'm going to press this S to D button, and that changes it now into a mixed fraction, 2 and 3/20. Okay, so if I want to go back to the previous form, I can press that button again. So shift and the S to D button, and that will go back to the mixed versus improper fractions. It'll switch between the two. Now, if I have a graphics calculator like this one, I'm going to go into my run mode. I then have a button here, ABC. This is the button I'm going to use for my fractions. So if I wanted to do a half, I'm going to do 1, press the fraction, and 2. And you can see there's a little line there, a little angle kind of, and that's showing me the fraction of a half. So I can say a half plus, and now I want to add 3 1/4. So 3 wholes. So I'm going to do 3 fraction 1 fraction 4. So that's 3 wholes and 1/4. And I add that together, and again that gives me in that improper fraction form 15/4. If I want this in that mixed form, I can change that by pressing shift and pressing the ABC button. Shift and the F to D button, and that changes the answer to 3 3/4. So 3 wholes and 3/4. So there is how we can use our graphics calculator and our scientific calculator to do that. We want you to be able to do it by hand, but we can also use the calculator when needed. Thanks very much for watching.